In light of the recent sad events in Palestine, we have decided to dedicate today's video to look at the beautiful medieval history of Palestine. As you know, this channel is dedicated to exploring the medieval Arab world, and Palestine is a huge part of the Arab world up until today. So let's have a look at Palestine in the medieval times. If you've managed to watch our previous videos on this channel, there is always a recurring mention of Bilad al-Sham. Bilad al-Sham was the name of the region in the medieval times, and it encompassed modern-day Syria, Jordan, Lebanon and Palestine. So in the Middle Ages, it wasn't Palestine as we know it today, with the borders on the map. It was actually part of a wider region, as was Lebanon, Syria and Jordan. However, the area was still known as Palestine. In fact, the naming of Palestine goes back to the collapse of the Bronze Age. Some of you might be thinking, what is the Bronze Age? It was a prehistoric era dating from 3100 BC and ending in about 300 BC. And the reason it was called the Bronze Age, well, I mean, it's pretty much mentioned in the name, isn't it? So the Bronze Age, or the people living during that time, made their tools from bronze, which was an alloy. And so therefore the characteristic of that age was defined by this, and it gained its name as the Bronze Age. So back to the discussion of Palestine. Towards the end of the Bronze Age, after its collapse, a group of people migrated, and they were known as the Sea Peoples, which history records as a group of anarchic people who caused havoc towards the end of the Bronze Age from the sea. Thus they were given the name as the Sea Peoples. They tried to take over Egypt, but were defeated by Pharaoh Ramses III. However, there are many conflicting historical narratives about the Sea People, so it's an interesting topic if you want to read about it in more detail. So they had no place to go and ended up settling in the region we know today as Gaza in Palestine. Because they were a group of people without land and no identity, they laid down their roots in this land and called themselves the Peleset. Now, you can hear that sounds very similar to Palestine. Over time, the Hebrews of the region called them the Peleshet, and they were also called the Philistines. And this is how the modern day name Palestine came about, and in Arabic, Palestine. And the inhabitants are now called Palestinians. So Palestine as a region and people was not newly created after the Sykes-Picot Agreement in the early 1900s, which divided the land of Bilad al-Sham. It was in fact there and was known as Philistine, and the people living there were known as the Peleset, dating back to the end of the Bronze Age. So let's fast forward from the Bronze Age to the medieval times, which is the main focus for us today. Palestine and the region of Bilad al-Sham was very valuable for empires, which led to struggles over it. We can see this in today's world, and I think it's just that there is something special about this region which causes so many to fight for control over it. Geographically, strategically and religiously, it has much importance. So let's start by looking at the empires who ruled over the land we know as Palestine in chronological order during the Middle Ages. So starting from the early medieval times in 969 AD, the Fatimids, under the reign of Al-Mu'izz Lillah, expanded into Greater Syria under the general Jawhar. So he expanded into Bilad al-Sham, which encompassed Palestine. And we have actually mentioned Jawhar in our video about Egypt and how he founded Cairo. So after the Fatimids, the Seljuks came in the picture in 1007, establishing their empire and ruling over these lands. However, whilst the fall of the Fatimids and the rise of the Seljuk Empire took place, the Europeans went on a crusade. So from 1005 to 1291, there was a struggle between the European Crusaders and the Islamic empires over the land of Palestine and Jerusalem. The first crusade resulted in the Europeans fighting the Seljuks and taking Jerusalem in 1099. Then fast forward to 1187, Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi, also known as Saladin, took over Jerusalem after battling against the Crusades. However, a third crusade occurred in 1191, and after the negotiations of the Ayyubis in 1192, a truce was agreed upon. And then the Mamluks came in 1260 and took over Palestine after a famous battle of Ain Jalut against the Mongols. And to end the medieval era, the Ottoman Empire under Sultan Selim I ruled over Greater Syria and Palestine in 1520 after defeating the Mamluks. So, as you can see, the medieval history of Palestine was full of wars, turmoil, and different groups and empires fighting each other for control over the Holy Land. From east to west, many had their eyes on it, and the events are very well documented. However, as we like to do on this channel, let's zoom into the smaller details of daily life in medieval Palestine. It will give us a break from the power-hungry empires and the bloody wars. The personality of Palestine was mixed, as you can probably guess. The combination of Islamic and Christian rule was prevalent in its architecture, for example. Hundreds of churches were constructed during the Crusader period in Palestine, with 60 built in Jerusalem. Some mosques were transformed into churches. For example, the Dome of the Rock was converted into an Augustinian church, while Al-Aqsa Mosque was transformed into a palace by Baldwin I. As you know, with churches, expert masonry was always visible. The influence of Crusader architecture on the Islamic architecture of Palestine that followed was very prevalent in explicit and also hidden ways. For example, Arab castles constructed following the Crusades, like those of Ajloun Castle and Nimrud, had irregular shapes introduced by the Crusaders. The influence could ever be seen in religious architecture, such as the Great Mosque in Ramla, which resembles a Crusader tower. But during the Mamluk period, the Mamluks focused on rebuilding the road network, which was vital to their postal system in Palestine. Numerous bridges and khans were built, and some were actually large enough to have mosques and minarets. One example of these large khan compounds can be seen in Khan Yunis in the Gaza Strip. Some of the Mamluk bridges also remain standing, such as Jisr Jindas, or the Jindas Bridge. But what's also interesting is that the Mamluks heavily focused on the construction of religious buildings such as madrasas, mosques, and they are actually very impressive medieval structures. They also wanted to counter the influence of the Crusaders. So, for example, in Ramla, the Crusader church was converted into a mosque, and the Great Mosque there was rebuilt. So there was this tug of war in Palestine between Christianity and Islam, and one of the main ways they tried to gain control was by influencing how it looked. I mean, once you have your own identity on something, it becomes an advantage to your cause. Because of this struggle, Palestine has a mixture of Christian and Islamic architecture, which in my opinion adds to its beauty and diversity. Now, to zoom into even more detail about daily life in Palestine, starting with a quote from Al-Maqdisi, a medieval geographer, will be a good insight. He talks about the produce in Jerusalem and is always full of praise. He states, and I quote, that from Jerusalem come cheeses, cotton, and the celebrated raisins of the species known as Ainuni, excellent apples, bananas, which same is the fruit in the form of a cucumber. But when the skin is peeled, the interior is not unlike the watermelon, only finer flavored. Also, pine nuts of the kind called Quraysh bite, and their equal is not found elsewhere. Now, that is something else, that the richness in the city during the Middle Ages is unique. Other reports say that Palestine and Jerusalem was well known for its dried figs, raisins, textiles, olives, cotton, and even soap. And we actually discussed medieval soap in the Arab world in one of our previous videos, so do make sure you check that out. So to conclude, Palestine in the Middle Ages was a region full of richness, full of goods, which benefited traders and the inhabitants. It was an area so blessed that from east to west, empires tried to take control of it and put their stamp on Palestine and Jerusalem. The historical and unique status of this place, which dates back to the Bronze Age, is something truly amazing. Firstly, thank you very much for watching, and we want to quickly stand in solidarity with the Palestinian cause and the Palestinian people who have been subject to brutal aggression by Israel. You can do your part by speaking out on your social media page, writing to your local MP, and even signing a petition. All these actions, no matter how small, will support the end of the illegal occupation and the restoration of this beautiful country and land whereby Muslims, Jews, Christians and people from all walks of life can live. And if you want to read about the Palestinian issue, one book I highly recommend is The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine, which was written by Ilan Pappé, and he is an Israeli historian. So this is a very good factual narrative of what happened to Palestine starting from 1948, or even before that, let's say 1917. So thank you very much once again for watching, and as always, free Palestine.